guard the best basketball player on the court? I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
How to do it, yeah. Let me walk you through it. There's a method to the game. You ain't winning, then you're losing. Yeah. So if you want it, better prove it. Put the pedal to the metal. Feel the bass in the music.
Today's video is mostly about ego. It's about building your reputation, your legend, your legacy out here at the park. It's gonna elevate your game beyond most average players out here, and whether or not you care about legend and legacy, that's going to inevitably help you and elevate you as a player. So today we're going to be talking about why and how you should be defending the best player out here at the court and how that's going to benefit your game. First of all, why guard the best player? Why take on that burden? There are a few reasons. So number one being it's something that sort of evens the playing field among all players, meaning no matter what level of skill or experienced basketball player you are, beginner, intermediate, advanced, playing defense is something that we can all do sort of evenly, mostly because the brunt of all defense is about energy, effort, and hustle. There's definitely some skill and experience that go into being a great defender, but mostly it's about working really, really hard. And even if you're a beginner, you can be a very good, effective defender because most of it is dependent on that effort, energy, and hustle. Defense doesn't depend on talent. As I talk about constantly on this channel is applicable to any basketball player, but it's intended for those of us, myself included, who we have below average basketball talent and or athletic talent. So to be able to compete with players that have average or above talent, simply all we have to do is work harder than them, outwork them. And when it comes to defense, that's perfect for us because we can play hard, strong, good, energetic, hustling defense, even though we don't have the talent that they may have. So that's number one. Anybody can play really good to great defense if you're willing to put in the energy and the work. Number two, it's going to set you apart from the average player out here, right? The average player, think about it. You're talking about outdoor recreational basketball. To most players out here, what's important is that they score first, usually off of shooting three-pointers nowadays, and they win second. Being a scorer, being a three-point shooter, a good, reliable three-point shooter means most to them. Winning is second, and then they build their reputation off of those two categories. But however they score, be it three-pointers or whatever, in order to score often and consistently, you need to have strong, fresh legs to be able to do that. Because of that, most players are not going to want to play good, hard, strong, constant defense because it's going to make them tired, fatigued. It's going to wear out their legs. The more tired their legs are, the harder it's going to be for them to score. Therefore, they usually lay off on defense or get lazy on defense. They don't really play defense because they're saving themselves, their legs, their energy to score the basketball. This is where you come in. This is where you can set yourself apart, because if you come along and you build up the reputation that you are going, not only are you going to play defense, not only are you going to be one of the best defensive players, but you're going to take that ability and apply it to the other team's best player, who's usually going to be their best scorer, and you're going to shut down, or at least cut down dramatically, that player's effectiveness to be able to score. Because what happens often out here is one of the best players, like the best teammate who is the best player on your team, he will say out of ego, well, I'm the best player on my team, I'm going to guard, defend the best player on the other team. Because if he can guard and be effective against the other team's best player and he's this team's best player, then by default, that means he's just overall the best player. He's doing it out of ego. The problem is when you defend the other team's best player, you're going to be outputting all kinds of energy and effort and hustle. You're going to be fatiguing yourself. You're going to run out of breath doing that. And when that happens, it's going to be hard for your team's best player to score effectively, or the way he's used to being able to score. So what will often happen is, inevitably, that player will start to get lazy on defense. He'll start to play off that other team's best player, because he's going to naturally start conserving energy and effort, save it for offense, save it for scoring. So if you come along and you have the reputation, you're building the reputation of being a good, solid defender, one that can play good, effective defense on any team's, best player, and effectively take away a good amount of their scoring, that means your team's best player doesn't have to have that assignment anymore. If they're not guarding the other team's best player, now they're able to save themselves even more so that they can score and be the star and hero of your team. By building this reputation for yourself, what you're essentially doing is setting yourself apart. You are setting a standard, a reputation for yourself that most other players out here don't have. But if you have the reputation where you're gonna be a good, hard, strong defender who is also effective, right? You are showing the better players around you, not only are you going to make the game easier for them so that they can conserve energy and score more, but by doing so, you're also going to help them win more games more often, which means not only are they going to be able to score because they're saving energy, but they're also going to be winning more than they would without you. And by doing so, you're pretty much making yourself invaluable. Especially when you're a younger, more beginner player, you want to cater to the older, better, more experienced players around you the best you can. So if you can show them, you can help them by making the game easier for them and by helping them to win. Like, the more significantly you can do those two things, the more value you're going to bring to yourself, your game, your reputation. And then as you move up in stature, like if you're a beginner and you become intermediate, right, now you just sort of have a standard set for yourself, which is, I'm just a good, solid defender. Like, people know that when they play against me, they're really going to have to work hard to score, because I'll bring the energy, the effort, the hustle that's needed. And because I've put in all of that effort, I've earned experience and skill now that I'm intermediate. So overall, I'm just a good, solid defender, and whether they have to play against me or with me, everybody knows that. That's why you should guard the best player on the court. When it comes to how to play this good, effective defense, I can't really tell you like specifically how to play each player that you're going to come across, right? Because it's very dependent on you and your game, where you are, how you play your game, what is dependent on what your strengths and weaknesses are. And the same thing applies to the players you're going to be defending. Those players are going to change from game to game. Because of that, I can't tell you exactly how to play this kind of defense we're talking about, but I can refer to the principle of proximity. What I'm referring to is, how close are you to the player you're defending, right? Whether or not they have the ball, this principle applies the same. So the closer you are to the player that you're defending, right, the more he's going to have to work to get rid of you, because he wants to create space so that he has space to do whatever he wants to do with the basketball. Most players are going to play standard, solid defense. They're going to put themselves far enough away from the player they're defending so that, they're in the ideal distance, the ideal space from that player, so that they can defend them driving past them passing the ball, or them shooting. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's certainly not like that's a bad thing to have that much distance or space from the person you're defending. That's a very good, ideal distance to have. However, at that distance, the player you're defending doesn't really have to work hard, at least from an energy standpoint. When we're talking about defending the best player on the court, You really need to, if you're not, here's the deal, if you're not making an impact against that best player, then what's the point of you guarding them? Like, you're not building a reputation for yourself if you're just playing regular old defense on them. Your objectives are, number one, you have to make them uncomfortable in any legal basketball way you can. Under that umbrella of making them uncomfortable means you have to tire them out, like make them fatigued, get in their space. Don't give them any space to operate in. The less space they have to work with, right, the more they have to work to create that space, the more tired, fatigued, out of breath they're going to become. Secondly, you want to make them frustrated. Frustrate them the best you can. The more uncomfortable you make that player, the more frustrated they're going to become. The more frustrated they are, the less composed they're going to be, and the more out of control they're going to become. The more they're going to start doing things they don't like to do, don't want to do, are not used to doing. The more you force them to do that, the less effective their game is going to be. Also, if you stay at that standard, ideal defensive space and distance from the player you're defending, you're not doing anything to set yourself apart, because that's what everybody else is doing. What I recommend, especially for beginner players, right, is just close that space. Get right up next to that player. Don't give him any space to operate with. Make him, if he's gonna get free, like if he's gonna get open, make him earn that from an energy effort standpoint. Make him get out of breath trying to get away from you. Now, when you play that good solid defense where you're at the ideal distance from the person you're defending, right, you're not really at danger of being burned by that player, right? It's because it's not something where, like, if you make a mistake, if they shoot a jumper and you were too far away from them to block or really contest their shot, you could make the case, well, that could happen to anybody, because anybody would be playing that ideal distance away. So you're not really in danger of being burned by that player. As opposed to if you're doing what I'm telling you to do, which is get up on that player, right? Close that distance. Now it's going to be much easier for that player, especially if they're experienced, to fake you out, to burn you. So they'll fake you one way, you'll fall for it because you're a beginner, because you don't have the experience yet. He'll fake you that way, you'll go with him, and then he'll just go the other way, and he'll be wide open to do whatever he wants to do with the basketball. That's the danger of playing so close to that offensive player. But I say, especially if you're a beginner, get burned. Like, get faked out. That's part of the learning process. That's a necessity. You have to go through that. As you mature, as you learn, as you gain that experience, right, you'll learn that you don't always have to play super tight against that player, whether they have the ball or not, right? It's sometimes you'll get to the point where you will be able to actually manipulate them by allowing them some space sometimes, and then closing it, and then allowing it, and then closing it, right? You're not always gonna have to play that super tight defense, which is gonna get you faked out and burned to the basket. But you're not gonna be able to gain that experience and that skill without first playing that really tight defense on a player, making them work hard, making them uncomfortable, making them frustrated. You're not gonna gain that experience without expending that energy and that effort by getting in their grill and just staying there and being a nuisance to them. And don't try to be clever, don't try to be cute, don't try to exhibit skills and experience that you haven't learned or earned yet. Meaning, don't play off of a guy just because that's what everybody else is doing, because number one, that's not setting you apart, and number two, if everybody else is doing that and they're more skilled and experienced than you, they're doing it for a reason that they've already learned, that you haven't learned yet. So until you learn it, get up on that player, make him work hard, make him get out of breath, exhaust him. In my opinion, that is going to go so much farther for setting up a reputation, a legacy, a legend for yourself than just playing regular old standard defense that everybody else is playing out here. Set the standard that even if you do make mistakes, even if you do get faked out or burned on a play here and there, you work hard on defense. You make the best player on the court work absolutely as hard as they can to get the kind of shots they want, because you're putting in that effort, that energy, that hustle in order to force them to be the player that they're used to being. But when you are on them, when you're defending them, they simply can't be that player, because you're going to be right up on them, making them uncomfortable and making them frustrated. That's why and how you should guard the best basketball player on the court. Let me finish this off by talking about the actual physical conditioning you're going to need in order to be able to do this. If you're a beginner, or if you're just somebody who hasn't really put in that much effort into defense, the kind of effort that I'm talking about, know that it's going to be very demanding on you. You're going to need levels of energy. You're going to need, VO2 max, a lung capacity that you probably don't have yet in order to play that kind of defense. Because you're going to be playing at a level, at an intensity that's probably the highest of any other player on the court. You have to, in order to make that best player, not just an ordinary regular player, the best player on the court, work hard. That's the only way you're going to get them uncomfortable and frustrated, is by being on them, making them work harder than they're used to. And the best defenders are the defenders who can make those best players have to output more energy and effort than they're used to, and then when they put out that little bit more energy and effort, then you elevate your energy and effort even higher, and then you just keep sort of building on that over time. The more energy they put out, the more energy you put out. The more they work, the more you work. It's eventually going to get to sort of a battle of wills, like how much energy are you willing to put out, how much effort and hustle are you willing to put out compared to what they're willing to do. Because remember, they're the best player, which means they're probably the scorer, they're a shooter, right? They're used to having to work to get shots. Question is, can you make them work harder than they're used to? Can you make them work harder than they're comfortable with? Can you make them frustrated by doing that? Can you take them to a level that they're not used to, that they've never been to before, thus making them uncomfortable and frustrated? And if you can do that to one best player, then you can learn through experience and skill how to do that to any other best player out here. Now, don't get me wrong, that does not mean you're going to be able to shut down these players, right? You're going to come across super talented players who are just better than everybody, including you, and it's not really going to matter, what kind of defense or how hard you play that defense. If they're just that talented, they're just going to have their way. It doesn't mean that you're going to shut these players down. It just means that you're going to make the game as hard as you possibly can on them. Hopefully, that's harder than any other player out here can make the game on them. If you can build that reputation, that's what you do, you make the game hardest on any player that you're defending, you build that reputation, you can make yourself invaluable out here, because defense, again, is not something that most players want to do because it's hard. They avoid it. They play regular defense. If you can set the standard that you are the best defensive player around, you're going to set yourself apart from everybody else out here. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to help you to be a much better defender in a way where it just sets you apart from the average player, at least the average player out here, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you hit that thanks button down below. When you hit that thanks button, not only does it directly support the channel, but it also highlights any comments you make below. So when you comment to tell me how you like to play defense, how you like to use defense to set yourself apart from the other players out here, if you hit that thanks button, not only does it directly support the channel, but it highlights all of those comments, setting your comments apart from all the other comments. So if you do hit that button, thank you very much. As always, like, share, comment, hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I will see you guys next week.
Okay, I came here to win it. Ain't no quitting till I get it. You know I'm locked in and they watching like they don't wanna miss it.